Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere and welcome to the Niche Cast. We're coming at you on March the 2nd, and you know what we do? We just chat Aotearoa sports. That's it, no fluff, just Aotearoa sporting matters. And today we've got Wellington Phoenix still top of the league, doing their thingy thing. We've got the Aotearoa Warriors playing good rugby league football. We've got the White Ferns not playing good cricket. It's interesting. We'll get into some nitty gritty, but I was watching that game and the White Ferns took a bunch of wickets after scoring 200 runs, and there's just this feeling where I had no confidence they were going to win. And it's a bit of a chicken or the egg situation because you are kind of putting out this negative energy that you know they're not going to win. You have no confidence that they're going to win. And then they start misfielding, allowing the singles, and they have no intention to defeat England in that innings, or in the second half of the innings. So what do? They lose from a winnable position, and that is the White Ferns story coming up against England in the T20s and ODIs so far. But we will be chatting about that. We've got some Joseph Parker stuff to touch on. We've got a bit of basketball to touch on as well, and who knows what else may pop up in our podcast today. Obviously, we're from the niche-case.com, where you can read in depth about Aotearoa sporting matters. I'm wrapping up the domestic cricket season. So we have a Plunket Shield, like how Wellington won the Plunket Shield. Lots of information about Wellington being Plunket Shield champions. There is also a top 10 young cricketers from Aotearoa yarn on our website at the moment as well that you can check out. I did wrap up the White Ferns T20 series against England, so that was lots of fun to highlight how stinky they are. That's cool. And we will have the Flying Kiwis yarn that will be on the website. Might find space for a QNRL spotlight this week. Don't know who will be on. Maybe a Lydia-Ko mixtape as well, because Lydia-Ko is playing golf and she's doing all right at the moment. So might need to do the 2024 Lydia-Ko mixtape because she finished tied for 13th at the Ford Championship. I think that was the one in Gilbert, Arizona, which means Lydia-Ko, she's played 5 tournaments this year and she's got 3 top 5 finishes in 5 tournaments and 4 top 15 finishes in 5 tournaments. So Lydia-Ko's doing well. So that means the Lydia-Ko mixtape on ways. What else you got? You got any writing in store for us this week? Aside from your weekly Flying Kiwis, which is a mandatory read for any Kiwi football fan?
Extra mandatory this week too. It's a massive one because you had a lot of and hopefully I'll finish it today. I think I'm on track to finish it today, but it's a bumper one because a lot of these all the English teams and a few others as well played double games because of Easter weekend. So they played on Friday and then again on Monday. So there's a lot of games to catch up with. And in keeping with recent themes, a lot of goals too. Like Andy Riley scored a couple goals. Even Pynenberg scored a first goal in pro football for Feyenoord. Callum McCall got on the score sheet this morning. Chris Wood, of course, once again, they're not even the only ones. There's more where those came from. So yeah, people check in with that one. I've got plans to get through something about the Wellington Phoenix women now that their season is finished. Might get around to doing some Wellington Phoenix blokes, although I think the theme of their most recent win was the same thing I wrote about last time I wrote about them, which is just defensive prowess. And something on the NBL. I started off on Friday's newsletter writing I'm just going to pick an intriguing player from each team just to give people who are sort of trying to get into the season an idea of here's an in for watching each team sort of thing. And that ended up being too big to fit in an email. So I'm going to try to turn that into an article. It's in the in-between stage at the moment. It's too big for the email, not big enough for an article. So I'll fill that out and then try to get that done. Probably tomorrow. Probably that sounds like a Wednesday job.
And that's what the Niche Case does. We do our in-depth deep dives, going into the deep end, deep in the mangroves on our website, theniche-case.com. And we also deliver a Monday and Friday newsletter where a lot of our Aotearoa sporting ideas, nuggets, kernels enter the realm, you could say. They depart our subconscious and they become words in our newsletter via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. And if you were signed up to our free newsletter, you would have got a pretty extensive breakdown of the New Zealand Warriors. That was just there, Monday evening, actually. And you would have seen Tohu Harris high on life in the press conference. That gave me a little giggle. You would have read a whole bunch of stats that I'm going to touch on in the podcast here. You would have also got some information about the Newcastle Knights, their Kiwi NRL flavour. You would have also read that the Panthers have Kiwi NRL juniors at every level as well. You would have read that on Friday, because I wrote that on Friday, and then we had Josiah Vaha'akolo Fafita scoring a try for the Panthers SG ball team. A couple days after, I broke down how him and his brother Jodeci are in the Panthers system. They're straight out of South Auckland, so shout out to them. And the Monday newsletter also had all the stats for the New Zealand A woman who had a ODI, or it's like they call it an unofficial ODI series. Let's just stick with one dayer. They had a one-day series victory over England A. So all of that was there in the Monday newsletter, as well as a wrap of the NBL Finals in Australia and other bits and pieces that my comrade wrote for that Monday newsletter. I'm seeing here you also went deep into the players from the All Whites, how, where, how, when they wound up returning to their club footy. So you've got a list here, guys who were in the all-white squad, then played full games. Guys who were in the all-white squad and then started but were subbed off. Guys who were subbed on. Guys who are not involved. And guys with no game yet. So you've got a full all-white squad breakdown of those players returning to professional football in the Flying Kiwis ranks. And that is to say, thenichecase.substack.com is where you can find a whole lot of Aotearoa sporting notes, nuggets, bits and pieces that you won't find anywhere else. Like a lot of the other media in Aotearoa, they'd rather talk about overseas matters, maybe some Premier League football on the 6 o'clock news. How cool are the English people playing football? We don't care, unless Big C Wood is nodding in goals facing the wrong direction. Like, that's what we're all about here. So if you want actual Aotearoa sporting information, no bullcucker, no foreign information, no overseas, like, oh my God, the NBA. Unless it's Steve Adams, we don't care. Unless it's Chris Wood, we don't care about the Premier League. And unless there's a Kiwi involved, and even if there are Kiwis involved, we don't really care about the IPL. We're more Plunkett Shield type of geezers. We're more county championship Kiwis in the county championship type of geezers. And that's what we cover every Monday and Friday via our free newsletter, thenichecase.substack.com. Now, if you do want to support the Niche Case, and consider this a call, a bird call. Cuckoo! Maybe, I don't know what sound pukekos make, but it's a pukeko call. All the Patreon subscriptions. Big up to everyone on the Patreon whānau who has been supporting us for a long time. Big up folks with a paid Substack subscription. Big up everyone who has donated through Buy Me a Coffee. But all of that's dried up. It's all dried up for the last few months. So this is a call for anyone. If you do enjoy this content, we are literally doing what no one else in New Zealand is doing, and we're doing it to the best of our ability because Aotearoa deserves it, because Aotearoa sports deserves it, and we're doing our best. And it's a bit of a tough grind. So this is a call. If you do love what we're doing, if you do appreciate it, and you are in a position to support us, fund us, donate to us straight up the guts, please consider joining our Patreon whānau or upgrading a free newsletter subscription to a paid newsletter subscription. You can make a one-off donation through Buy Me a Coffee. There's a whole bunch of ways that you can fund our work directly. And we appreciate everyone who has been doing that for a long time. We keep showing up to reciprocate that support, but also it's all dried up to start 2024. So we need a bit more support. So if you are out there enjoying this content, please consider that. But, you know, as I said in a recent podcast, you know, we're also a bit poor. We're also, you know, we're in no position to be laying down a house payment. We're in no position to be worrying about interest rates or mortgage or first home buyers. We're not even in that realm. We're in this realm where we ourselves are poor hunters, and all the generous folks supporting the niche cache, they literally keep some petrol in our tanks and a little bit of food in our belly. They pay for the coconut water that I do like to sip. So shout out to them. But of course, if we're poor hunters, there's people in far worse positions than us, and we don't expect everyone to come out and support us in that way. So your presence here with us is more than enough. Please tap in with any free way to support the niche cache to keep us rocking and rolling. Subscribe on YouTube, hit us up on social media, sign up to the free newsletter that comes out every Monday and Friday. Check in with the website as often as you can. Tell a friend. Like, just be here with us, help us build out this Aotearoa sporting community. We live not to divide, we live to unify, and that's what we're out here doing. So whatever your background, whatever your financial wealth situation, we don't care. We're all here in honor of Aotearoa and Aotearoa sport. I don't think I've missed anything there. Got it all covered, which means I need to kick back, relax, and absorb some mindfulness. What do you got?
I've got 5 simple words from Thich Nhat Hanh, whose name is almost as long as the mindfulness quote itself. And it's a super powered one. I saw this and I thought that's one of those, you know, some of the mindfulness is specific to a aspect of life. This one seems to just be like a bit of a meaning of life, kind of overall big picture thing. It goes, smile, breathe, and go slowly. 5 nice and powerful words there from Thich Nhat Hanh.
That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, one of my favorite phrases that I repeat to myself and repeat to others. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So if we slow down, we smooth down, we go smoothly, and then we go fast. So can you repeat the mindfulness just to get us in the zone before we get a bit hectic?
Speed up again.
Before we go crazy with the Aotearoa sport.
Smile, breathe, and go slowly. You know what I like about that is it's sort of like a 3-pronged. Breathing is your groundedness. That's your own self. Smiling, how you interact with others and the world around you, and going slowly, that's intentions, right? That's have an intentionality about what you do. So very short, succinct mindfulness that seems to latch onto a little bit of everything there.
Apparently there are developments with Joseph Parker. What is the latest with Joseph Parker? Of course, fresh off his victory over Zhili Zhang.
Yeah, Zhili Zhang, who had a rematch clause. That's the thing, is Parker took that fight knowing that Zhang at that point just was I don't know if he was more high profile or what, but just for whatever reason, there was a one-way rematch clause put into the fight. Parker didn't have access to it, but Zhang did. And so obviously if he loses, he's going to want to take up the rematch clause, which he basically said straight away, like, yeah, I want that. I knocked this guy down twice and I feel like I can do better next time. However, as excellent a performance as that was from Joseph Parker, I wouldn't say for the neutral fan it was necessarily the most entertaining fight imaginable. Probably, maybe a little bit more than the Wilder one, but the Wilder one also had, deeper kind of narrative around it. I think the narrative carried both of those fights to some extent, because Parker had, 2 very similar performances where he's just the more clinical, the the fitter, the more just technically what I won't say gifted, I'll say technically like proficient boxer in both cases, winning 12-round decisions over guys who supposedly have much more power than him, but he absorbs that and gets through, gets the win. That's like a rematch clause is one thing, but someone has to market it. And there's always another option. And it sounds like the Saudi Arabians, who basically run heavyweight boxing at this point, it seems like, I think that's a very quick takeover, but they seem to just be funding everything. So they kind of call the shots there. If they don't want that Parker versus Zhang 2, it's not going to happen. And it sounds like they don't want it, and it sounds like it won't happen. And what they want instead is Wilder versus Zhang, which is fantastic from a Joseph Parker perspective because it's the battle of the losers. It's the two guys, it's like the third and fourth round playoff at the World Cup. It's like the guys that he beat. But that sounds like that's probably going to get organized, which, by the way, would be a pretty cool fight because, the weaknesses that they showed against Parker were the same, and therefore you put them in with the same weaknesses and the same strengths against each other. That's actually a great matchup. I'd look forward to seeing that. But it also frees up Joseph Parker. And it frees him up at a time where his reputation on the back of those two wins is probably greater than it's ever been. And yeah, we don't exactly know what's going to happen next for him. I mean, like a title bout is probably not just not feasible right now because you've got the Usyk Fury fight coming up soon, and then Joshua will probably want to fight the winner of those. And if he does, he'll be first in line and before Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker's always said that the fights he wants, whenever he's asked he wants to basically just avenge his defeats. So he wants Dillian Whyte, he wants Joe Joyce, he wants Anthony Joshua again. The three guys have beaten him in the past. And he put out a video, I don't know if you saw it, but he put out a video of him like doing one of his lip sync dance things, which is genuinely quite hilarious. There's dudes that do the thing where they like jump into the ring at someone else's fight and be like, I want you next, like you and me. This Joseph Parker just does a funny video and says, Dillian Whyte, let's go. Dillian Whyte's just back from a drug suspension, but he did have a good win in his first fight back. So he's back in contention again. I would love to see that fight happen because I think Joseph Parker will beat him this time around. I think he's a much improved boxer from when he first fought him. And even when he first fought him, that was a bit of an unlucky one. But the important thing to say is that Joseph Parker seems to have been freed up from that Zhang rematch. It doesn't seem like he's going to have to go, walking back through his own footsteps again, repeating things. He gets to actually cash in on the fact that his reputation is as high as it is right now in organizing a fight that he wants to see happen. So he deserves that, I think, and that's an exciting little development in the Joseph Parker journey.
We also had the start of the NBL season. I didn't catch much of it because there was a lot of other sport happening, but I did see, and it was unfortunate because the Auckland Tuatara got absolutely smoked by Wellington Saints. But I did see Rob Lowe getting into a bit of a scuffle, and I was like, whoa, that's Rob Lowe, who Nick of the Wildcard always mentions as a Melbourne United legend. And like Rob Lowe literally does everything for the Auckland Tuatara, it seems, as well as bodyguard duties. Like he's a hitman as well. And I just had a little chuckle, like Rob Lowe just getting into it, getting in the mix with some niggle against the Wellington Saints. What stood out for you? Like that was a big victory for the Wellington Saints. Obviously, Wellington, they have our favorite New Zealand basketball player, well, apart from you and Rob Lowe, but they do have Hiram Harris, who is an absolute legend of New Zealand basketball. What stood out for you in this opening round of New Zealand NBL basketball? Because we also had the Australian NBL Finals wrapped up, I believe. Tasmania won, but they didn't have much Tommy Vodanovic action in their finals campaign. So you can, whichever NBL you want to talk about here, but either wrap up the Kiwis in the Aussie NBL, and or what were some key takeaways from the opening round of New Zealand NBL basketball, which is coming thick and fast because there's another game tomorrow on Wednesday, Southland versus Manawatu, and the games come pretty much every day.
Yeah, they're rapid with those things. They they spread out the fixtures quite nicely though. That's the cool thing about the NBL is you can just like it's hard to watch every game, but if you're a diehard enough, you would be able to because they do spread them out. But also, it's just the kind of thing that just always seems to be on in evenings, like late in the week, outside of the sort of Monday and Tuesday kind of little window. There's just often an NBL game on in the evening. You get home, sit down, grab your dinner, tune in. It's sweet as like there's just good Kiwi sports viewing. Just quickly on the Aussie NBL finals, yeah, Tasmania Jack Jumpers, they won it. Only I think like their fourth season or something in existence, so a spectacular run from them, and it was a good example of a team that sort of was not the best team throughout the season, but just got on a roll at the right time and carried that momentum through the playoffs and upset the Perth Wildcats in the semis and then upset Melbourne United in the finals. So fantastic run from them. Unfortunately, yeah, could have done with a bit more Tommy Vodanovic and Walter Brown. I think Walter Brown got in on I think he might have played a little bit at garbage time in their play-in win. Um, Vodanovic got a little bit in that game, and I think he sort of played once each in the semis and finals. So not a lot going on there. Both of them sort of got buried in the roster. And in fact, Tom Vodanovic wasn't even there for Game 5 because he was a mid-season addition to that team and had already long since arranged his wedding for that weekend, which is two rings in 1 week. Tom Vodanovic, sweet as, but probably one of those ones where he might have wished he'd got the booking in for a week later just so he could at least have been there for the celebrations, as Walter Brown was. Both of them will be back for Kiwi NBL now. Vodanovic with the Tuatara, Walter Brown with Canterbury Rams, who he won a title with last year, so he's coming off winning the NZ NBL title. Now he's won an Australian NBL title. He just wins stuff. I guess next is, I don't know, qualify for the Olympics with the Tall Blacks, maybe. I guess you got to back it up with the Rams as well. So yeah, that was a couple new NBL champions from Aotearoa. It would have been the case either way because Flynn Cameron with Melbourne United, also he didn't really play throughout the finals, but Shea Ili had a big role. I did feel like Shea Ili's last couple games weren't quite as good, and he just like I don't know if that was adjustments by Tasmania, but he was getting to the rim, but he was struggling to finish with a lot of those little like driving layups, which he's normally very good at. And he wasn't getting to the foul line as often as he usually does. So probably a solid way of them adjusting to him. But other than that, he was as good as Shea Ili always is, defensively key. Massive steal towards the end of game 4 to help them come back. Late on in that match and forced Game 5, but unfortunately it wasn't the B for him. But he's won a championship before. He won't be back in NBL. He's not playing Kiwi stuff, but Flynn Cameron will be with Taranaki. So all them fellas will be popping up, and there'll be a few more imports popping up. And that's the thing with the New Zealand NBL at the start is you do get a lot of these like the teams aren't quite fully formed yet. It's a bit of a like slow build towards the season. So you saw that a lot throughout round 1, and I think that probably includes the big dramatic result of the week, which was Wellington Saints beating Auckland Tuatara, who are probably title favourites and beating finalists last year, beating them by 30 points, which was just an outrageous turnout. Hiram Harris was spectacular. I think 28 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, just fantastic from him. Tuatara banked on having a really strong starting 5, and that starting 5 isn't all there yet because Vodanovic isn't there. Still had Glidden, still had Tarangi, still had Webster, still had Lowe. So they shouldn't have been smoked by what they were. But that's basketball. That happens. It's a great way to start the season as well because Tuatara have felt like the dominant team for the last couple of years, but they didn't actually win it last year. Wellington Saints were the dominant team for like a decade before that, but are coming off a really bad season last year. So this is a big statement of intent from them that the Saints are back. The Saints are going to be a factor at the top of the table this season, and I'm sure Auckland Tuatara will swing back around. They'll bounce back from that terrible first game. Other than that, it's a little window of opportunity for some of the sort of fringe Kiwis who will be replaced a little bit by imports later on down the line. Not replaced, but pushed back a spot on the depth charts when some of those other guys turn up from Australia and also from America and overseas. But there's nice little opportunities. I'm looking at like the Phi had a 20-point win in their first game. Cruz Para Hunt 23 points there. Sweet as. Taylor Britt's always going to be a big dog for the Rams, but he did have 20 points and 8 assists for Canterbury. Probably don't need to go flipping through all the box scores though to pick out guys. I'm gonna Jack Andrews 16 rebounds. Who was the other one? I think had a massive rebound thing. That was for Otago. Tyrell Harrison, I think it was. Manawatu. 16 points, 24 rebounds for Tyrell Harrison. He's only going to be here short term though, so that's like he's coming off a massive season with Brisbane in the Aussie NBL where he was shortlisted amongst the top 3 players for most improved. So he was great. He was fantastic and wasn't expecting him necessarily to play in the New Zealand stuff. He was signed with a Aussie NBL 1 team, but then there's also rumors that he might go to Italy. And so I wonder if maybe the NBL 1 thing is falling apart because he's going to go to Italy and therefore he's just staying fit by playing the start of the season with Manawatu. That's the conspiracy theory anyway, but we'll see. As much of Tyrell Harrison in this team as possible is a very good thing for the Jets and also for this league.
Before we get into Wellington Phoenix, who are top of the table, best team in the A-League, and as you wrote about, best defense in the A-League, I am tempted to just enter the Flying Kiwis department because I feel like you got a lot of information about Chris Wood and that goal he did scored. For anyone who hasn't seen it, Chris Wood, cross comes in. It's not really a cross. It's like a diagonal kind of cross. It's an aerial pass into the box.
Yeah, into the mixer, as they say.
Into the mixer, but it's like a north-south type of pass, and Chris Wood nods it. It's like an anti-nod because he's gone back. It's like a, hey, bro. It's like one of those. He nods it with the back of his head. That's why he's so good
at it. Only a New Zealander could have scored that goal.
Exactly. He nods it with the back of his head into the goal. So it was a spectacular goal. So you can wax lyrical about Chris Wood, but you did mention some of the other Flying Kiwis. Otto Ingham also scored a goal. But there is a bit of buzz about Tyler Bindon as well, one of the best young All Whites out there at the moment. So just use this opportunity to touch on some of the key Flying Kiwi storylines from the weekend and download some of the, or not some of, lots of the information that is currently in your noggin.
Yeah, I love the Tyler Bindon story right now because it's, he's a centre back, so he doesn't get in the highlights so much. I don't get to share Tyler Bindon's goal every couple of weeks or anything like that because obviously he's not scoring them. He does have one this season. He did score one earlier on, but he's, just turned 19 like a month or two ago, and he's basically starting every game like a leader at the back of the Reading defense. And Reading, we've talked about them before. They have had a shambles of not just this season, but like the last few seasons. They've got an owner who doesn't really want to have anything to do with them, doesn't pay for anything. Players like wages are getting delayed. They're going through cost-cutting measures and training. They were going to sell their training ground. I'm not sure if that actually happened because another club had an agreement to actually buy their training ground from them. And then I think there might have been some backlash of like taking advantage of the club in a bad situation. So I don't know if that happened or not. There is talk now that there might be some North American owners who are going to step in and take over, but Reading have struggled badly. They had to sell a bunch of their best players in January, or a couple of their sort of top young prospects that they could get the biggest fees for in order to pay for the rest of the season. There was question marks maybe over whether Tyler Bindon would get swept up in that, but I think it was probably a little bit too early, but it worked out perfectly for him because at a time where he was sort of like a little bit in and out of the starting lineup, when they sell a couple of defenders, well, suddenly there's no choice, but he has to be a key player. He's been superb for them for the last few months. And like the best example of how we can prove how superb there's been is that I did a tweet about how he's played more than anyone else of his age or younger, or in fact the year above him, in League One this season. Like across all of the clubs in League One, he is the player who, of that sort of like I guess you could say of the teenagers in the league. I don't know if that quite works out exactly, but roughly of the teenagers in the league, nobody has played more minutes than Tyler Bindon. Of I think 46 different players in that age range who have featured, and that just got swept up this morning by by all the Reading fans, giving it mad interactions on that. So you can tell the Reading fans are pretty keen about him. All Whites fans have seen what he can do now after a few games. He played right back and helping them keep a clean sheet against Tunisia. So that was, just carrying on. He seemed to have slotted pretty quickly into the All Whites setup. He's just a classy centre back. He does have a young face. You don't necessarily expect this of him, but I don't think we've seen it necessarily in the for the national team. But for some of his Reading games, you see he's a pretty hard tackler as well. You can see that he's silky on the ball. He's a good passer, and he's a very composed, good leader despite his youth. But he also is a pretty hard tackler. So that's something else in his favour there. Definitely looking forward to the potential of a Sermon / Bindon centre back partnership for the All Whites, and the next couple of World Cup cycles. I think there's plenty of potential there. He's fantastic. But to pick one other Flying Kiwis player to highlight might be Indy Riley, I think, for PSV, where scored a double on the weekend. Second one should have probably been like an 85th minute winner, but then they conceded an even later goal straight after they subbed her off. So maybe there's something in that. But yeah, she's just playing left wing for a good team, the third best team in Netherlands. So good, solid team, not quite of a Champions League caliber, but next best, and starting every game and getting fairly regular sort of goals and goal contributions for them as well, which is important because, as we know, that's what the football ferns have been lacking. Well, here's a player who's in Europe scoring regular goals. She's up to, I think, 6th this season in the league. Can't remember if she scored anything in the cup, but no doubt will be an important player for the football ferns, who play this weekend against Thailand in a 2-game series. I think they play on Saturday. I was going to say Saturday morning, but they're home games, so they won't be early morning kickoffs. We'll actually get normal kickoff times. So Saturday afternoon, I suppose, in Christchurch, and then again in Christchurch on Tuesday evening, I think it is. Or it's football ferns against Thailand. So those are 2 winnable games, and I expect Indy Riley to be pretty important in them trying to score a few goals.
There's no issues with the goalkeeping depth from Aotearoa men or women, and we did see that with the Wellington Phoenix women, who unleashed another young Kiwi goalie. Do you want to just explain that situation a bit as well?
Yeah, Amy Daniele called in late notice to replace Brianna Edwards, who's out with personal reasons at the moment. I think she's just taken a bit of a mental health break or something, and has missed the last couple of Phoenix games. So Amy Daniele has been called up on the 3rd string to sit on the bench for the Knicks, but sitting on the bench is one thing. They subbed her on in the last game of the season to actually give her a start, which is cool. She came on, made a brilliant save. Riley Foster, the normal goalkeeper, loved it. Big shades of when Lily Oldfeld subbed off to give Brianna Edwards her debut. So that's great culture there. Love to see that. And yeah, Amy Daniele, professional debut straight into the football ferns. She did win a Kate Shepherd Cup with Auckland United a couple of years ago in the same squad as Millie Clegg was in that team. Ruby Nathan was in that team. And also Prue Cadden, who scored 70-odd for New Zealand A in the women's cricket the other day as well.
Where would you put the number of professional goalkeepers from Aotearoa? Because in my mind, hard and fast, I reckon there's at least 10 men and women professional goalkeepers. Is that too high? Right. Is it too low? Is it around that mark?
That depends where you want to draw the line at professional, because if you start counting like players who are in academies and stuff at overseas, or including the Wellington Phoenix, and I think you're going well beyond 10. But like just off the top of the dome, like All Whites got obviously Ollie Sale and Alex Paulson starting every week in the A-League. Max Crocombe, Nick Zanev doesn't really play anymore at the moment for AFC Wimbledon, but he's their backup goalkeeper. He's an experienced pro. Kay Sims just made a move to a top flight club in Sweden, where he's now their backup. If you want to dip into some of the sort of like fringier players, Jamie Searle, Scott Morris, Henry Gray, like dudes like that. And then obviously the women have got Vic Hessen and Anna Leat both playing at a very high level, especially Anna Leat, who right now has this little window of opportunity because the keeper who's been the starting keeper this year, the Dutch, Daphne von Domselaar, who's the Dutch number one, was their keeper at the World Cup. She's out injured for the rest of the season. And Arsenal are already made it clear they want to sign her in the off season. So Anna Leat not only has a little window of opportunity where she's going to get to start the rest of the WSL games this season, that might also be an audition for whether she gets to be the number one keeper for a WSL club next season as well and beyond. She's probably the goalkeeper who's playing at the highest level of any of our keepers. But then beyond that, I mean, you can still count Erin Naylor, even though she's third or fourth choice at Bayern, doesn't play, but is, a very experienced professional at this point. And yeah, like Phoenix have got Brianna Edwards and now Amy Daniele as well, having played a professional game. So there's a lot.
That's more than 10. So shout out to
That's more than 10.
Aotearoa and the goalkeeper farm system across this great country. The Wellington Phoenix, they are top of the league. They did have a 1-0 win over Brisbane Roar. And I came into this game around 82, 83, 84, 85th minute, somewhere around there. And I flicked it on. The Wellington Phoenix were 1-0 up and one player down. Old mate Alex Rufer, as you've got behind you, had a little... what would you classify that stomp as? Was it like an aggressive stomp? Was it an accidental stomp? Was it like a clumsy stomp? Where do you sit on the scale of stomps? Specifically
the stomping scale.
The stomping scale specifically for football, though, because as we know, all the stuff in football is a bit goofy. So it's a footballing stomp. It's not like it's a bottom of the ruck.
He's not clearing out the ruck. Yeah. I would say it was an accidental one with elements of clumsiness. The dude like weirdly swept up the ball between his heel. He's lying on the ground, like belly on the ground, and he sort of sweeps up the ball between his heel and his hamstring, if that makes it, like he just sort of catches the ball in his leg wrapped up, and so Rufer kicks it out, and then in kicking it out, his foot's got to go somewhere and it lands on the back of his leg. So not, elements of clumsiness involved. I thought a red card was extremely harsh for what was clearly like a footballing move. Like the dude shouldn't really be playing the ball on the ground. And even if it happens accidentally, like you can see he kicks the ball, then he gets a little bit of a follow through. It sort of feels like one of those ones where if it was a tackle, deciding whether or not it's a penalty, they always say things like, well, he got the ball first. And I think that's a little bit of a myth because I think that's stupid. I think it's the way you can get the ball first and still be a clumsy / dangerous challenge, which is worthy of a foul. I actually think that's what happened to Nando Pinecker for the All Whites against Egypt. It's debatable whether he got the ball, but I think there was an angle where it showed that he did scrape a sprig over it, but also didn't get enough of the ball to where he changed his trajectory or stopped the guy from would have been able to get a shot away. Then he follows through and cleans him out. So I don't know. You just don't know what to expect with these things now. The football decisions get so overanalyzed, especially when you bring in the VAR stuff. You just toss a coin sometimes with these ones. David Ball kicked a dude in the head in the first half, didn't get sent off. I thought that was probably worse than this one. I don't think either of them were deserving of a red card, but generally, if you go up for a couple VARs, one of them's going to end up as a red card. That's how these things unfortunately go. And the Phoenix just had to battle without their captain and did so against a team who they did actually concede a late equalizer against the last time they played them, which I think was away. So there was a little bit of history there, and this time they were able to, shut the gates and preserve that clean sheet, take another 3 points on top of the tally. And it's only a 1-game suspension, which is nice, because if they said that was a deliberate stomp, that would have been a 3-game suspension. Instead, they've effectively said, clumsy, accidental, but it was a red, so 1 game.
Yeah, trying to get into the mind of referees and whatnot is my least favorite thing to do, but we did accurately classify Alex Rufer's stomp as clumsy, so that's good for us. But I think it was kind of like, as long as this doesn't have a grand impact on the chances of the Wellington Phoenix winning the A-League, which, praise Jah, they're top of the league and they look like the best team in the A-League right now. As long as Rufer's, there's no greater implications there, all good. And I actually think this was a pretty positive situation for the Wellington Phoenix because they have to play 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, a man down, and they have to showcase their mana, their grit, and their defensive prowess that you have already highlighted for our website, the to make sure they got the win and they stay top of the league. And I think, again, we're drawing this connection between the Wellington Phoenix and the New Zealand Warriors. The Wellington Phoenix can absorb a situation like this. Not only can they absorb it during the game, because you've got, like, I'm not did Houston Salas, did he come off the bench or was he starting?
No, he started at right back because Tim Payne is out injured.
Right. But you can, like, I said it at the time, adding Houston Salas mid-season, now he's just another hearty footballer who has a lot of skill and a lot of physicality. So he can plug these holes. He's already doing it, replacing T-Pain. And I did notice he's Delphin. He's the Delphin.
Yeah. I don't know what that means or why.
Well, it means he's young Delph.
Young Delph.
So shout out to young Delph, Houston Salas, the Delphin. You can go Delphin as in the dolphin, or you can go young Delph as in young Dolph, who was a rapper who got shot and killed like every other rapper. So shout out to young Delph, Houston Salas, because I think he is a key addition to a Wellington Phoenix mid-season and how he's covering positions. But like, this is a team that's already top of the league without Oscar Zavada. Like, I don't think little moments where they lose a player here, lose a player there, as long as it's not like, yeah, this player's out for the whole final series, he's a first 11 starter. Because even then, like, there's been chopping and changing in what the first 11 is. Like, there's a lot of variety in how the Wellington Phoenix can line up. So I think it was a beneficial situation in the bigger scheme of things as they chase A-League glory.
Yeah, just another example of the Phoenix being, having adversity placed in front of them, and then just, people talk about overcoming adversity. It's like it's climbing a mountain or something, like a great athletic feat kind of thing, a big achievement. The Phoenix just shrug adversity off. Like, they don't have to overcome it. They just don't even like acknowledge it. It's not a thing to them. They just, this is the mode they exist in anyway. The thing that other teams need to reach to in those moments, the Phoenix just play like that from 0 to 90 and beyond. So nothing really needed to change much for them. They just held it. Like, Alex Paulson had another fantastic game, kept another clean sheet. Finn Sermon playing with the bandages all over his head after he left the All Whites early because he got kicked in the head and had a cut opened up. I wonder how many, I don't know if I've got the thing here of how many like headers he must have won, but suffice to say that in fact, it doesn't say how many headers he won on here. Oh, it actually does. 3 out of 3 aerial duels and also 70 out of 70 accurate passes. So getting kicked in the head actually made him a better passer. Perfect pass accuracy, and he won every header he went up for. With a big ass bandage on his head, which could have opened up a cut and been like leaking blood at any moment. Just a heroic performance from him as well. And this is this is the dude who captained New Zealand at the Under-20 World Cup last year. So I don't know how old he is now. I'm guessing he's 20. The maths would add up if that's the case. First season as a regular starter, he's just coming in and giving a performance like that. And then also, someone like Sam Sutton, who's been out of the team mostly through injury, but also just alternating, even when he's been fit, alternating with Lucas Kelly-Hill. He had an excellent game here, and he set up the goal right at the start, an important contribution there, and then did all his defensive mahi the rest of the way. This is just the state that the Phoenix exist in. And because they're able to grind out a victory like this, and because they've consistently, I think they've lost one of their last 13 games or something like that. So they're actually sneakily on a really good run, equivalent to what they were doing at the start of the year, pretty much. They throughout that, they had tough games where they were the second best team, and they've had to sit back and absorb lots of pressure and been able to escape, especially in some of those away games, been able to escape with a point which other teams would have not been able to achieve. And then they've also had these games like a home game where they're not at their best, but they still win it. They've had not as many games on the other side of that equation as you'd hope, like games where they just crush a team and put them away. But I think that's where we fall back upon the fact that the strength of this team is its defensive solidity. It's not its like goal scoring prowess. There's been a few players who've had fantastic attacking years. Costa Barbarousa's been old, obviously, but defensively is where all the foundations are set. And that's how they won another game against Brisbane Roar, which boosts their first place status even more because the night before, Sydney FC beat Central Coast 2-0, which not only gives the Phoenix, I think they're a 6-point lead now, though Central Coast do still have a game in hand, but Central Coast win that game in hand. Now they're still 3 points behind. They play Central Coast next. I'll check if that is a home game or an away game. It is an away game, which is less ideal. And Alex Rufer, that is the game he's suspended for. But that's another one of those examples. Like if they do what they've been doing throughout the season, they go to Central Coast, they scrap in against a very good team, against their main title contender rival at this moment, which you have to say, looking at the table, it's weird to talk about the Phoenix in that context, but if you look at the season to date, and just the table represents that anyway, so that's all you got to do. That's what it is. That's the situation we're in. They can scrape a draw from that, then it's pretty hard for Central Coast. I think the Phoenix would have 3 games left after that. Central Coast would have 4 more games. It'd be quite hard for them to catch the Phoenix at that point. Like they're basically already secured a home finals. I don't think that's mathematically done yet, but realistically, they're not going to drop out of the top 4. But like, minor premiership, premier's plate, whatever you call it, that is right there for the taking for this team now, after another one of them solid, gritty defensive victories.
The similarities between the Phoenix and the Warriors are endless. Because, like, the Warriors are pretty stout defensively as well, and I know both teams have like young, well, relatively young for coaches. They've got young Aussie coaches, Andrew Webster and Chifi Italiano, who are driving really impressive sports. Like Chifi is driving impressive football with how they attack. You've talked a lot about how they have tweaked their attacking system to create better chances. It's all about creating better chances, taking those chances, but you've also got that stout, resolute, resilient is your favorite word, resilience in defense. And, you know, you can look at the table and that's pretty evident. You did mention Central Coast Mariners. So the Wellington Phoenix, they've conceded 23 goals. The Mariners have a game in hand and they have conceded 24 goals.
There you go. Not only did that loss boost the first place things, but it also gave the Phoenix the best defensive record back.
Yeah, but the Mariners have a game in hand.
Yeah, but they can't concede. They can't unconcede goals, right? They've already conceded more. They can only, the best they can do in the game in hand is keep a clean sheet, and then it's still 23-24.
Yeah, but if the Mariners, yeah, true. I don't know. I'm done. So, yeah, they've good defense, and this is incorporating a bunch of ideas, because I did notice the Warriors versus the Knights at Mount Smart. It was very different to the Warriors versus the Sharks at Mount Smart. And I was fascinated. Like in between, we've got the Christchurch Extravaganza, which was a fantastic event in itself. I don't know if much carried over. I did hear the faint sound of like ooh ah up the wires, but it wasn't very pronounced at Mount Smart. So it's hard to compare the Mount Smart versus Christchurch Warriors experience because they are very different. But the Mount Smart faithful definitely showed up and put their case forward as the best Warriors atmosphere, the best Warriors crowd. And the Warriors are getting 24,000 people in attendance at Mount Smart, which is massive considering last year they were like, if they hit 20,000, that was a really good crowd. 20,000 was like the benchmark of, oh, what's happening here? Couple of games at Mount Smart, now they're hitting 24,000 and people are trying to sit everywhere. I respect to the Phoenix, but they are still one of these New Zealand sports teams who have to close off sections of the stadium. Now
Had
that's
I think 8,000 in the weekend, which is kind of a disappointing crowd for a team playing as well as they are on a public holiday as well.
yeah, and it's like they are the Wellington Phoenix playing in Wellington, so it is a bit wonky,
Yeah,
but not. But
it's not a
I
direct comparison,
but
yeah,
they're
because of
also playing in a
populations and whatever.
yeah, they're also playing in a big stadium, so you kind of see what's happening. But I'd also suggest that I saw sections of Eden Park closed off for the Blues game. Now, this is very different to what happens at Mount Smart, where there are no areas closed off, and people are trying to sit on grass embankments. People are trying to sit on the staircases. People are trying to be tucked away in the corner out of the wind. Like, people will literally sit anywhere, whereas other sports teams are closing sections of the stadium. Like, it's a completely different vibe, completely different situation. But the first game, we obviously had the situation where there was a ground announcer trying to start chants, and he, like, from what I heard, it wasn't the same ground announcer. They did seem like different people. So maybe he's just got the boot after round one. Everything from round one seemed to be taken away for this game. Like, a lot of the loud music, a lot of the just glitz and glam that the Warriors rolled out for round one didn't really seem to be there for the game against the Knights. Most notably, the announcer trying to start chants, and this was fantastic because it allowed the fans to do their own thing. So the fans started their own chants, and it was very organic, and it wasn't as loud and hostile as some would want it to be, especially compared to what they were trying to drum up in round one. But it did offer situations, and I'm curious if they're, because the Wellington Phoenix crowd, obviously they're highly educated, and this is a football thing as well. Like, if you're in a football game, I'm mainly thinking of like a packed out English stadium, and you make a key defensive play in front of your home fans, they're going to go nuts. If you do that on the right side of the cake tin, they're going to go nuts. But if you do it in front of the empty stands, it's going to be harder for the fans to go nuts because they got to, oh, what? Yep, right, you're over there. Like that type
You
of
know
thing.
what though? When Alex Rufer got sent off, and there was obviously a little bit of kerfuffle after that about I think the guy who he stepped on gave him a send off, and Rufer sort of turned and said something to him. Rufer was pretty pissed off because he obviously felt it wasn't a justified red card. But as he's walking towards the tunnel, which is where all the fans were on that side, luckily, walking towards the tunnel, and he gives it a bit of a G up to the crowd and gets a big roar out of them and all that. Like he's getting the crowd going after being sent off. So there's pockets of outstanding atmosphere at those Phoenix games. It's just I do wish there were bigger things so that you can get closer to what the Warriors are doing. Apparently, just each and every week now, like just sellouts every game.
Yeah, like the Phoenix atmosphere is fantastic. What I'm talking about is a very specific, educated fan thing. So when you're watching cricket, primarily like at the Basin Reserve, and there is a throw that goes directly over the top of the stumps, you'll get a nice little applause. And that's cricket fans knowing what is happening, and they appreciate the good work. When you make a key defensive play in football in front of your fans, they will applaud that just as much as an attacking play. Now, without the ground announcer starting up weird chants, without music blaring throughout the game, the Warriors, like the Phoenix, are a good defensive team. And there was a moment in that game against the Knights, I think it was in the second half, later in the second half, maybe after Bradman Best had scored his try. Old school Warriors, they're probably allowing the Knights back into the game, but the Warriors make a stop on their try line, and that's when you get the applause from Mount Smart. And that filled my soul with love and likes. I was like, these fans are really tapped in. These fans know what is happening. They can, that's where you start to get fan interaction when there's a slow play the ball, when the other team's offside. Because, and it'll be the same for the Phoenix, and any cricket audience, well, maybe some cricket audiences. The fans are there for the sport. The fans aren't there to be on the piss for a party. Like, they know what is happening in the game, And that was what I saw with the Warriors, because they just kind of shut down the Knights. And I'm curious to bring you into the rugby league discussion. When you're the Dragons, they're winning. Shut up. Dragons won a game.
They did win on the weekend. They did.
When I watch the Warriors, and especially against the Knights, like you're like, okay, the Newcastle Knights, Kalen Pong is the main attacking threat. But as we've talked about with the Warriors, if there's a ruck, the attacking threat starts with Wade Egan. And then the attacking threat, the genuine attacking threat, you just move outwards with each player. So you got, in this instance, you got Adam Pompey, who's a good runner on one side. You got Rocco Berry, who's a good runner on one side. You got Watene Zelezniak, good finisher on one side. Marcelo Montoya, good finisher on the other side. Sean Johnson, Luke Metcalf, Sean Johnson, Chanel Harris-Tavita. You got Jackson Ford running good lines, working hard. You got Kirk Capewell running good lines, working hard. You've got the complete threat of the middle. Tohu Harris passing footwork. Fanua Blake passing footwork. Mitchell Barnett, psycho. Like, you've got every channel of the field, there's an attacking threat. And that felt a lot different to the Newcastle Knights. I'd imagine it feels a bit different to watching the Dragons, because when you're watching the Dragons, you're probably identifying a few key players who can spark something for the team.
One in particular.
Zach Lomax?
He's the guy on the end of the Ben Hunt kicks normally, yeah. Don't really want Zach Lomax doing the sparking stuff, because that's when the ball ends up in the crowd, but he's very good on the end of them.
But the thing about this Warriors game against the Knights was that, how did they score their tries? Jackson Ford hit a short ball. Chanel Harris-Tavita was in support of Wade Egan, who made a line break out of dummy half. Marcelo Montoya caught a kick. It's not a lot of shape there. There's no Watene Zelezniak diving into the corner. So the Warriors, like, there's no Tohu Harris passing to Tom Alley to go through. There's no Fanua Blake bursting through the middle off their shape. The Warriors scored tries in different ways, and it was pretty comprehensive in that sense, where they were just able to do a few different things. The whole game felt a bit different for the Warriors, because they were also, like, after my big tirade about Rocco Berry just waiting for blokes to catch the kick and smash them. Well, I think it was because the Warriors got a bit more meters. They were able to roll downfield a bit easier. So suddenly those kicks that go high and land just in front of the try line, Rocco Berry and the chasers don't have to go as far, so they can actually get to the kick and compete. Whereas if you're battling against a better team and you're going set for set, you're kicking from 10 meters back. So then it's a easier equation to just let the dude catch the ball, smash him. But there were a few things that were different, and the way they scored the tries were really different as well. So that highlights how the Warriors have just threats throughout their team. And I think that also stems from, like, I'm 1-17. I'm feeling pretty good that the Warriors have better players than the opposition, specifically the Knights in this game. And I had the same feeling when I was watching the New South Wales Cup game. I'm like, 1-17, these dudes are just better. They run harder, they're more explosive, they're more dynamic, they're more skillful, they're better coached. So it was a really good weekend for the Warriors in New South Wales Cup and in the NRL, coming up against the Knights team where you just felt confident that your team, the Warriors, were better.
Yeah, it did feel like that. It felt like they, I don't know, it felt like a game which they could have won by a lot more if they were maybe a little bit deeper into the season, and a little bit more sort of in the flow of things. But I also kind of am hesitant to say that, because we've been talking about the Phoenix. It's the same thing. Like, Phoenix are top of the table without hardly ever having had a game where they just roll over a team. It's because they're able to grind teams out week after week. That's where the steady results come from, and that was pretty much exactly what we saw from the Warriors against the Knights. And it wasn't a repeat of the finals game last year, where they really did get a roll on and just sort of buried them in the end. But it's also, of course, it wasn't the same because it's not got the same amount on the line, and it's just it's a round four game. It's not a finals game. But yeah, I think that's a good way to summarize it. It did feel like the Warriors were just better, and they always had a little bit more in the tank, and they always would just winning that arm wrestle by a little bit more, getting a little bit more in their sets, and just I think this is effectively what who'd they talk to afterwards? It might have been Kalen Ponga. It's usually Kalen Ponga they stick a microphone in front of after a night's game. So I think he basically said, like, they asked him where to go wrong. He's like, well, they just kept us pegged back, and we couldn't get out of the we just couldn't win the field position kind of stuff. And that, to be able to do that over and over and over throughout 80 minutes wins you games of rugby league. And like there are other ways to win. I watched the Dragons win in a game where there were 30 combined errors between the two teams. It's the opposite. That's just both teams giving the other team as many opportunities as they can handle. This is the Warriors absolutely refusing to give the Knights opportunities throughout a game. And they're both those two teams are 2-2 on the ladder right now. I'm going to hazard a guess and say that the Warriors formula is the more successful one long term.
I read about this yesterday in the newsletter because there were Kalimpong and Tuivasa-Sheck are very different types of fullback.
Despite the broadcast telling us how similar they are throughout a lot of that game.
To be fair, they are both really good at running the footy.
Great steps.
Yeah.
Sort of use them in very different ways, though.
Yeah. It's funny to see New Zealand media, obviously Australians just get themselves in a froth and they can't stop themselves either. But the Andrew Webster's just telling everyone Tuivasa-Sheck is going to be the centre. So what happens? Everyone says, is he going to be the fullback? It's like, well, the coach is telling us, the coach literally told us that Tuivasa-Sheck wants to play centre and play his role in a good team. So let's just chill out and just let that happen. But I think it's interesting because the way Tuivasa-Sheck plays fullback is a similar way that Shans Nickel-Krokstad plays fullback. Shans Nickel-Krokstad doesn't quite have the footwork of Tuivasa-Sheck, who showed that he has the best footwork in either code ever. That is undeniable at this point. But Nickel-Krokstad brings his own skills. I think he's a better passer than Tuivasa-Sheck. I think some of his subtleties are better. And I think just some of the intricacies of fullback, because it might have been the Bradman best try. One of the tries for the Knights was off a kick. And that type of stuff of tracking the ball, being there on the ball to shut down plays. I think that's Nickel-Krokstad is just a bit better at that, because Tuivasa-Sheck hasn't necessarily been in the zone to play fullback. He's been preparing to play centre. But the difference between the two teams, I thought, and I don't think this was a great Warriors performance. They were missing some key players. They were a bit clunky, but as you said, you can make up for that with your grind, with the basic tough performance. The Warriors had no issues getting downfield. And that, Tuivasa, you kick to Tuivasa-Sheck, boom, he's got a roll on. Then you got Montoya, Watene Zalesniak, they're running like psychos. Pompey and Berry, they can make, Pompey can always make meters. He also gets driven back because he does his ghost step where he jumps up and he's kind of floating, and he will shimmy to get between defenders 6 out of 10 times. 2 more times, mid-jump, he's going to be driven back. And that's all good. But what Pompey and Berry do, I reckon, is they've got a big lean going on. They lean forward. And so they can always make meters. But the thing is, the Knights don't really do that. Pong is not going to return the ball hard and fast. Tuala was all right. And then whoever their other winger was, didn't even see him, the Pakia Jerry, Jenkins. He didn't do anything. So that's the Warriors' recipe, and it's a very different style, because once Tuivasa-Sheck gets the ball, he's running. when Ponga gets the ball, he's looking for space, he's looking to create things, which did lead to a few line breaks coming off their own end. But if you're trying to do it over and over again, as the Warriors do, as the Knights want to do, Tuivasa-Sheck just starts the sets off so nicely. And I'd also highlight Wade Egan's line break that led to Chanel Harris-Tavita's try. I think Tuivasa-Sheck was there in support of Wade Egan. So Wade Egan gets out of dummy half, Tuivasa-Sheck's right there with him. You got to respect Tuivasa-Sheck, and the moment you think about respecting Tuivasa-Sheck, Wade Egan's gone. So that was cool. And they also had a play where it's like one pass to the left, and you've got an inside decoy runner, and then you've got Tuivasa-Sheck as an inside second man play. So he gets the ball with a second man shape out the back, cutting back into the middle. And those are fantastic things to do with a fullback like Tuivasa-Sheck that I think you can also do with Sjans Nickel-Klokstad, because he's fast, he's got good footwork, he's powerful, he's a really good fullback. And it just shows Ponga wasn't really getting into those positions. And it's a very different type of fullback. I think what I'm explaining is that for Ponga to be most effective, his team needs to be dominating physically, and that didn't happen. And Ponga's not going to spark up the physical dominance. Whereas for the Warriors, you can make a case with the footy, Tuivasa-Sheck is sparking that physical dominance because he's always getting between defenders. He doesn't just leave defenders clutching at Casper, as he did to Matt Croker. But his footwork, he also bumped off Adam Elliott. That's the thing. If he does choose to run straight, he's going to poke through the defensive line. And I keep reminding myself, when I watch the Warriors play, they just don't know how to tackle Tohu Harris. Because you watch Tohu Harris, he goes slow to the line. He's kind of like taking a settler. Bang, late footwork. He's in between a defender. Like, people think they can just kind of chill out on Tohu Harris. You're not chilling out on Tohu Harris. Like, that dude is an absolute legend, and he's fantastic. So I think I did mention last week, I think that Raiders matchup is good for the Warriors. And even with losing Luke Metcalf early in the game, Chanel Harris-Tavita comes on in the halves. You got Pompey at center. There's no Dylan Walker. A few different things happening there. Like the Phoenix, the style of football, the style of rugby league was there. And it didn't really matter who was playing. The Warriors just got into their flow. We're going to complete, we're going to kick, we're going to run hard, we're going to do some things with the footy, we're going to move you around, because that's what the Warriors do. And I'm curious, if you see any similarities with the Phoenix. We've talked about this before, but the Warriors, as I said, every channel they are attacking. They will attack the space in the middle. They will attack the space on the edges. They will do their shape to try to get on the outside of you. And if none of that's working, well, Wade Egan, he'll run out of dummy half. And there's so many ways for the Warriors to score their points and to make plays that is just as important in grinding the opposition down as it is to complete your set, make your tackles. Because if you're shifting the opposition around while you've got the footy, you're going to that edge, now you're challenging this middle, now you're challenging that edge, now you're going back over there to challenge that edge. You're making the defenders concentrate for longer. And that is very tiresome if those defenders have to then chase the kick, get back onside, get smashed by the Warriors, they kick, and now they're doing that cycle over and over again.
Yeah, I don't think the Phoenix are as sort of I don't know if sophisticated is the right word for it. I don't know if they're as deep into that stuff as the Warriors are, partly because this is the Warriors in their second year under a new coach, whereas the Phoenix are first year situations. But I think you see it less in the versatility within a single game, but more the versatility from game to game, because I think they're very good, especially Chiefy, very good at spotting matchup things with between different opponents and being like, well, this team maybe plays a back three with a high line. So we're gonna look to get Costa Barbarosas to make his runs through the middle and try breach that line. And or maybe this team's fullbacks get very high up the field. We know we can contain them, and we know that that's going to leave space. So we want those runs out wide, and we want our fullbacks pushing forward and like pinning their ones back and like just utilizing the space behind those kind of things. Where I think from game to game, there are little subtleties where they change things up specific to who they're playing against. I don't think you necessarily get a lot of variety within each of those individual games, though. But that's partly like, I think if they had maybe a midfielder with a bit more sort of on-ball creativity, that there might be something that could change. But like I say, like they're not a spectacular attacking team. They're a spectacular defensive team with a good enough attack to win games on top of that.
Shout out to the Knights, though, because they do have a lot of players from Aotearoa in their system. No Leo Thompson in the NRL game. But the New South Wales Cup team did have Elijah Salisa Leon-Moana. He's from Southern Cross Campus. So Southern Cross Campus, they got Leon-Moana and Jerome Falemoy in the Knights system, as well as Leka Halasima, who is yet to play for the Warriors this season. But the Knights also had Temple Kalepo, Ellerslie Jr. in New South Wales Cup. Sebastian Sua is a Mount Albert Jr. He didn't play in that game, but he's also in that reserve grade area. Knights jersey flag, Jerome Falamoy, Tamakai Moana Whare Aurere. He's from Te Puke. You got Jaden Harris, who is from Northland. Tirani Woodman Tuhoro is also from Northland. SG Ball. You've got Hami Loza and Sasaya Latu going crazy. Takayo Cranwell, another Christchurch junior from Linwood. And you've got Bailey Carmichael, also from Te Puke. So the Knights do love Aotearoa. As a observation about Kiwi NRL recruitment, though, I'm not that confident that the Knights are going to develop these players into established NRL players, because you look at previous dudes who the Knights have invested in. Stafford Toa, he left for the Tigers. Simi Sasangi, he's left for the Raiders. And they were players who the Knights recruited from Aotearoa, brought across to Australia, put them through their system, and they didn't really develop into NRL players at the Knights. What happened with Leo Thompson? Well, the Raiders recruited him from Aotearoa, the Knights signed him from the Raiders. So it'll be interesting to see how those players in the Knights system develop, given what has happened previously. But Leo Thompson's pretty damn impressive, and there's a lot of them, and they're from all areas of Aotearoa: Northland, Auckland, Te Puke, Christchurch. But the Knights are pretty invested in talent from Aotearoa. Just quickly before we finish with a bit of cricket, we've talked a lot about the young players coming through the Wellington Phoenix system, a lot of academy players. So not only are the Wellington Phoenix top of the league, they're probably doing so with the most local juniors in their system across the A-League. And those dudes are all contributing to a winning team and a winning culture. The Warriors aren't top of the league. So let me get that straight. Sure, they're doing big crowds, they're doing better things, but they're not top of the league. So shout out to Wellington Phoenix. But I think it is a nice time to check in with the New Zealand Warriors system after 4 games in New South Wales Cup. They're 2-2, so they are 10th out of 13 teams. But they had a good win over the Knights, and this was interesting because Ben Farr was the only Aussie in the team. And the Warriors have it seemed to me like Geronimo Doyle was playing fullback, even though he was listed in the halves with Ben Farr at fullback. It seemed more like Ben Farr was playing in the halves and Geronimo Doyle was playing fullback, with Tamaita Martin steering the ship. But I think ultimately Farr and Doyle are interchangeable, so that's a cool little thing you can do there with the Warriors New South Wales Cup team. And the whole system is the same. And that was something that you would be aware of with the Wellington Phoenix, is how important it is to be playing the same style, running the same plays, having the same structure and mindset as the top team. And that goes for any sport. Like whatever club team you're in, if you've got the premiers, premier reserves, second 11 and so on, you need to be playing the same way as your top team, so that if a player is promoted, they know exactly what to do, how to do it, and they can slot seamlessly in. And I think that's, like, I would suggest that maybe this won't happen, right? Like, maybe no Luke Metcalf, he's out injured, so Te Maire Martin comes into the NRL team to play number 6 with Shaun Johnson number 7. I do love Te Maire Martin. I do have a bias towards Te Maire Martin because of his class and how physical he is, great passer, rips in defensively. But I think he's more of the Shaun Johnson player in the system. So it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight for teamless naming. But I would suspect that if Shaun Johnson's out injured, then Te Maire Martin comes into that number 7 position, because that's the role he's playing in New South Wales Cup. He is the halfback, and then you can have Ben Farr on one edge, Geronimo Doyle on the other edge. That's just a stylistic thing. But everyone else in this New Zealand Warriors New South Wales Cup team, they're from Aotearoa. And you've got a lot of fringe, like you've got these dudes, Te Maire Martin, Paul Roach, Keilani Going. They're just really good players who, they're a bit classier. They've got a bit more subtlety to their game. The rest of them are just behemoths. They're so powerful. They got great footwork. Like Setu 2 isn't like he's not as physically powerful as Zion Mai'uu or Ali Leotawa, but Setu 2 does some crazy stuff on the wing. Like the thing I love about NRL wingers is the creative plays they come up with, the chip and chase, the offload, the finish. You need to have those quirky skills. Setu 2's got that. You've got Edward Kosi on one wing, who's just a big bopper. Out on the wing, he's tall, he's powerful, runs hard, good finisher. Moala Graham Talfa is someone who Warriors fans need to know about. He's starting centre at the moment in New South Wales Cup. He's fast, he's got great footwork. He seems to be the same size as Leotawa. So that's a good package right there. Mai'uu, who has come back into the team after his suspension. What does he do? He runs ridiculously hard. He's a physical enforcer. I've been really impressed with Stowers Smith out of Christchurch. And who else was I going to say? Eddie Eremia. So everyone knows about Jacob Laban. Everyone knows about Ali Leotawa. Hopefully a lot of people know about Zion Mai'uu, because what's going to happen the moment he runs the footy at Mount Smart?
Instant cult hero.
He's an instant cult hero. So these dudes are well known to Warriors fans, and they should be well known because they're really good. You need to add Stowers Smith, Tanner Stowers Smith into that, because he is 20 years old, maybe 21 years old. He's playing 40 minutes against men in New South Wales Cup. Eddie Eremia, he only made his way into the New South Wales Cup team midway through last season. He can play middle, he can play edge. Very similar to Dimitri Sifakula. Very similar to Leka Halasima. Neither of whom have played this season in reserve grade. But also what happened this weekend is you had a few players moving up the grades, because under 17 and under 19 seasons are coming to an end. So players were promoted up the grade to keep playing footy. Especially the SG Ball team who are not in finals. So you could kind of fill that team with younger players, get some development there, push some of the key under 19 players up to under 21s. But what happened was Jacob Auloa, he went from under 19s to New South Wales Cup. And he played a few minutes off the bench at hooker. So that was pretty interesting there. Meanwhile, there were Motu Pasikala, Sio Kelly, Rodney Tuipulotu Veia, Kalis Fatialofa, and Alvin Chong Ni, who went up from under 19s to under 21s. And you did have Etuati Fukafuka playing hooker in the under 21s team. So another thing that Warriors fans need to know about is, well, all the dudes in New South Wales Cup are high quality rugby league players. But as we're seeing with the full repertoire of junior teams, the depth is pretty crazy. Like there's every position's going 4, 5, 6 deep across the, top 2.5 grades, I'd say. So just tap in. There's a lot of good players in this Warriors system. And considering there was only one Aussie in the New South Wales Cup team this weekend, most of that talent is from Aotearoa, although we do have the young Aussies, Jesse Sorich, Talon Egan, Luke Hansen. Luke Hansen has been playing Jersey Flegg as well. So you do have those young Aussie halves who are working their way through the system, but the dudes from Aotearoa are also getting a lot of opportunities. Did you see some of the White Ferns ODI yesterday against England?
I saw almost all of it, except for the brief good bit. I watched the whole first innings, and then I was like, that feels like a total they've got no hope of defending. And so I went elsewhere and was doing other things, and then I come back to check on how they're going, and they've got England 50 odd for 5. And I'm thinking, well, okay, hold on a second. Maybe I jumped the gun. Then they take another wicket and have them like 70 odd for 6. I'm thinking, there are a chance here, but I still kind of think they're going to mess this up somehow. Proceed with a world record, was a 7th wicket partnership, and then they lose quite comfortably in the end. And, it's a standard day at the office for the White Ferns, unfortunately. But they teased us for a while there.
That
Mostly
was
just the Kerr sisters, but still.
That was a quintessential White Ferns performance. They were bowled out. So that's not... And it's kind of quintessential because a lot of the runs were scored up top, like Susie Bates 50. Not a lot of other runs were scored, but he did have Bezodenhoop batting deep. Amelia Kerr got 24 runs, so it was quintessential in the sense that once you knock the top off the White Ferns batting order, there is no resilience. That is the key word. Warriors, resilience. Phoenix, resilience. Black Caps resilience is a bit iffy right now because there's not a whole lot of fighting for draws and fighting back into games. That's a work on. For the Black Caps, White Ferns, there's resilience, and White Ferns are in different. It's like one's in the cake tin, one's at the Basin Reserve. They're just not aligned at all.
Their resilience turned up at the wrong ground.
Yeah, so once they lose a few wickets. So Susie Bates scored 50. The opening partnership, they put on 90 runs. I'm yet to see Bernadine Bezoden, who really settle as an international cricketer. But she was the second top run scorer in this game with 35 runs, strike rate of 56. So I'm pretty confident in my opinion there. But her and Susie Bates did put up 90 runs. Amelia Kerr added 24 runs, and then no other batter scored 20 runs except for the extras. And as you suggested, big effort to get 200 runs, shout out. But it's not only is it not enough, but you've kind of fizzled out. You've been bowled out for a starter after losing your first wicket in the 21st over. And all that momentum, it gets fizzled out, as well as not really scoring enough runs. But then you do take some wickets, which was impressive. And then there's just no resilience.
And it fizzles out again.
And it was pretty interesting seeing how the innings folded. Because you do have, again, the benefits of having Alex Hartley in commentary, where she does... shout out Rebecca Rolls, but she's not going to be critical of any White Fern at this stage. Alex Hartley if there's sloppy fielding, she says that was sloppy fielding. If the White Ferns are too passive, she will say they are too passive. And this is because she is literally coming from an England women's cricket system where they're all high performance. Everything is like, we're doing this to the best of our ability. We're here to win. We're here to dominate. This is how we are going to win. We're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to win. So stuff like having the extra fielder out for the White Ferns compared to England, using your bowlers, building pressure in the field. It was all very different to how England operate. And as England was starting to gain ascendancy in their innings with Amy Jones and Charlie Dean, the White Ferns needed wickets, and it was all about how they're going to get the wickets because they don't have enough runs, so there's no point saving your best bowlers. So then you go on Leat and Amelia Kerr. Neither of them took the wicket, which is kind of important. Like, they did take wickets in this game. Tahu has some good short pitch bowling. She got Maya Bouchier out with the short ball. Amelia Kerr, as she always does, she's spinning the ball both ways. Like, they're good bowlers. They're the best bowlers. They're the most potent wicket-taking threats. But when they needed a wicket, they never really looked like taking the wicket. And I was like, in the back of my mind, I knew Fran Jonas had only bowled 2 overs. So they were going for the jugular. They were going for the wickets. And Fran Jonas only started to bowl after they got those wickets. And I would agree with that plan. Because Fran Jonas doesn't spin the ball, right? She just bowls left arm in swing. So when you hear them say, a great arm ball from Fran Jonas, every delivery is an arm ball. Some of them go straight on. Some of them swing into the right-hander, but there's not a whole lot of spin there. And I would agree because, like, Fran Jonas, she's averaging 41 with the ball since the start of 2023. And she's got an ODI bowling average of 43. So the first 11... pure spinner in the White Ferns attack at the moment's averaging 40 plus in ODIs. But I'm like, if you're Fran Jonas and you've only bowled two overs and then you aren't used, that's pretty rough for Fran Jonas, like she knows she's only bowled 2 overs, and then she's watching the most potent bowlers, because they also went to Jess Kerr. They also go to Hannah Rowe, who isn't taking many wickets. They go to those bowlers. They don't take the wickets, and here you go, Fran Jonas. So I was like, part of me was like, I can see why Fran Jonas has only bowled 2 overs. I'm also like, why is she there? But it's also like, if you put yourself in Fran Jonas's boots, then you're like, whoa, this is pretty rough. You're not going to use me when I got a chance, and then you're going to give me a couple overs when I've got no chance. Like the whole thing was just wonky. But it was the complete White Ferns experience with little decisions like that, collapses, no resilience. Most notably, though, mandatory fielding mishaps. Like, we're talking fumbling the ball over the boundary. Hannah Rowe got a run out off a misfield. So big up for that effort. Bezoden, who watched the ball go between her legs on the boundary. And all these things, what I was saying about Izzy Gaze, who, after we discussed a lot of Izzy Gaze, she did have a big knock in that last T20, so shout out to her. But if you're already battling in the game, and in this ODI, a lot of deliveries bounce straight out of Izzy Gaze's gloves, where are your confidence levels? If you are Izzy Gaze and that's happening, or your teammates. So what if you're England and you are Amy Jones, Charlie Deans, you're just solidifying yourself at the crease, You're trying to keep this innings together. And the White Ferns are rolling out their typical misfields, which they seem to do every single game now. Where are the confidence levels at? Like, you're the White Ferns, and you've seen this before. You've experienced this all before, being in a strong position and then losing the game. So you're feeling that sensation sweep across you as you misfield the ball. But then you're England and you're watching that happening and you're sensing what's happening because you've now experienced this a few times throughout this tour alone. So then you can smell the blood in the water. It wasn't good. But it's just where the White Ferns are at right now.
Yeah, the comparison between the White Ferns and England is important, I think, because the games aren't being played in a vacuum. Like they are up against a really good opponent who was likely to beat them anyway. Whether the White Ferns found themselves in winning positions or not, it's just England are a better cricket team. But also, yeah, there's that dynamic where it seems like, and this is another thing Alex Hartley said quite a bit actually, is like England have confidence that they can win from bad positions. They have belief that they can win from bad positions. The White Ferns are in the habit of losing, and so they find ways to lose from good positions. It's like these two things play off each other so much because, yeah, the England can see the White Ferns. One of the reasons they know they can win from those positions is because they know if they just put a little bit of counter-attacking pressure on the Ferns, like, this game changes very quickly. And that has routinely happened throughout this tour so far. Is just the White Ferns get caught. I don't know if it's like, I don't know if it's just being caught being a little bit conservative. I guess playing scared is probably the way to put it. Because like even when they knew they needed that one wicket, for the big partnership, the bowling changes suggested they were going for the jugular. I'm not sure the fielding placements or just the fielding itself, like the charging in and trying to be active in the field kind of stuff. I'm not sure that suggested they were going for the jugular. And you get stuck in this in-between moment where England just took full advantage of that. They're like, well, you guys are playing scared. We're going to play without fear and use your disadvantages to your disadvantage, if that makes sense. We're going to amplify your problems by just being better than you, Yeah,
I was just thinking a few things there, as I tend to do. 4 England batters had a strike rate of 100 or better.
I'm guessing no White Ferns?
Yeah. Well, no White Fern had a strike rate better than 82.
Damn.
So we'll finish with this. Maybe we'll do touch on the New Zealand A stuff because that is a bit more positive stuff about women's cricket. But there's kind of 2 things I want to ask you about. Like, do you see any difference between the quote-unquote Baz ball that England men are operating now and the Black Caps approach under Brendan McCullum as captain?
I hear a big difference. Whether I see a big difference, I do see a difference. I think the reason it worked really well for New Zealand is because you had Kane Williamson's steadiness and also Mike Hesson's sort of steadiness, but also a bit more like, I don't know, like a bit more of an analytics guy to use a phrase, balanced really nicely with McCullum's gung-ho nature. With England, you've got McCullum gung-ho, Stokes gung-ho, and everyone just letting them run loose. So I think they have issues with that, but there are definitely more similarities than people necessarily want to admit.
The main similarity is playing without fear.
100%. And that's the best factor for both of those teams' success as well in those periods.
It's the best factor for any team's success, right? Like, this is high performance sport. You're looking for any advantage, and not having the fear of failure or the fear of being dropped or the fear of repercussions knowing the coach supports you, appreciates you, and is backing your skill set. That's what Andrew Webster does. That's what Chiefy does. There's a reason why so many academy players can rise to the A-League level, because they got the backing of Chiefy. They're not scared of failure with Chiefy. Chiefy supports them. So ultimately, I don't see a whole lot of the main difference is that the English media, as they like to do, made it a gimmick, which is cool. That's fine. My point here is that whatever that is, whatever special sauce that Brendan McCullum brings to cricket, that Andrew Webster brings to the Warriors, that Chiefy Italiano brings to the Phoenix, whatever that special sauce is, it's not part of the White Ferns dish. Because the White Ferns are scared. The White Ferns are timid. The White Ferns are lackluster. They're not aggressive. They don't play with freedom. They don't express themselves. They're not having a good time. It's all the opposite. And it's a bit hard to say what I'm about to say because I'm not there at the White Ferns games, and I definitely wasn't there at the New Zealand A games. I can watch the White Ferns on telly, and I'm only watching bits and pieces of the New Zealand A game. I think Craig Cumming was actually the coach of the New Zealand A, which might have something to do with this. But you look at the energy every time one of the New Zealand A bowlers took a wicket in the third one-dayer against England. Like, they're fizzed up. They're having fun. Even the strokes, like, they're playing strokes all around the park. Prue Cadden, as you said, 3 games, or over the 3-game series, she's got a strike rate of 106. These players are out there expressing themselves. They're having fun. Molly Penfold, she's taken wickets. Nancy Patel, she's got a strike rate of 137, just having a crack down the order. Eden Carson gets screwed around by the White Ferns, comes back down to New Zealand A, takes wickets. Unfortunately, Lee Casbrook went the other way. She was playing for New Zealand A, then she went into the White Ferns for that glorious experience. So shout out to her.
You wouldn't have known it, though.
I did see her patrolling the boundary, and unfortunately in the last T20 she did get on the field and had a fielding mishap because she's part of the White Ferns. Right. But that is to say, like, there's different vibes there. There's different energy in the New Zealand A team compared to the White Ferns. And whatever label you want to put on this approach to playing sport, the White Ferns are the opposite. Like, the White Ferns are the best example for what happens when you play and you are hampered by those, I don't know if it's negative or just like whatever the opposite,
like self-doubt basically, and lack of confidence, and those negative kind of things that stop you from performing at your peak before you even get into the fact of trying to do the technical stuff of scoring runs against that England bowling attack or whatever, like before you even get to that stage, you're already on the back foot because you kind of don't believe you ought to be there. And I guess that is another one of them spillovers of selection stuff as well with the White Ferns, where some of those players kind of don't deserve to be there, where they're being selected on potential rather than on current ability, and you can just see like they're not really sure what they're supposed to do in difficult situations.
So what happened when England went to India for that Test series recently?
They selected I can't remember. Spinners. It was so long, I forgot.
They selected spinners who hadn't done anything in county cricket.
And one of them almost didn't get allowed in.
Yeah, so those players don't have... That's the same as the White Ferns, right?
Yeah.
They're both selecting players who haven't done anything in domestic cricket to warrant promotions to the higher level. And yet the players, Shoaib Bashir, Alex Hartley, Tom Hartley, I think his name, those type of cricketers, they performed pretty good in India. They didn't look out of place. They were up for the contest. They had a crack. But that shows you the different approach in building the confidence, the mana of those players, which doesn't happen for the White Ferns.
But does happen for the Black Caps, where you've got guys like Ben Sayers and Will O'Rourke coming in and playing as well as they have, like, you know, arguably better than they, certainly in Ben Sayers' case, bowling better against Australia in a test match than he probably had done in any Plunket Shield game for a year or two, you know?
So my hypothesis to finish with here, you mentioned some of the selections, but because as we know, these White Ferns woes, they've stretched across 2 different coaches. I don't know the role that Sophie Devine as captain has in all of this. Because she's been the captain throughout the 2 different coaches, right? And if we're talking about the influence that a leader can have on their team, Alex Rufer, Tohu Harris, those type of characters, but Brendan McCullum, we're talking about the Brendan McCullum approach when he was captain, as well as his time as coach now. So the captain can spark this approach to playing at the best of your ability. So the one constant has been Sophie Devine. She was the captain under Bob Carter during the ODI World Cup. Shit hit the fan there. We changed coach. And like things have kind of got worse. So that's not a glowing endorsement on Ben Sawyer, but he's doing the same stuff Bob Carter was doing. So when I'm thinking about the environment, when I'm thinking about the culture, who's driving that over the last 5 years, 4 years? It is the captain, Sophie Devine. And this is an issue. This is something that was weird. And it's not like, the other weird thing is that a lot of the players who aren't being selected, even though they deserve it, are from Wellington. Lee Kasperick, Jess McFadden, Zara Jetley. These players can add to, like I think Zara Jetley should have been in the New Zealand A team. We know Jess McFadden's the best wicketkeeper in New Zealand. Lee Kasperick's yanked all over the show. And that's where Sophie Devine's from. So you'd think she would be like, yo, big ups Wellington. We're the best cricketing region in New Zealand. Get our players in there. That's not happening. And the weird culture stuff, the weird shenanigans is happening with Sophie Devine as captain. Like, this team has got worse as a fielding unit over the course of Sophie Devine's captaincy. Team's got worse as a batting unit and a bowling unit as well. But at least the fielding stuff, like, that is effort, that is culture, that is your intangible type of stuff. And I'm not 100% all in on, like, Sophie Devine as captain is the issue. This is just something I'm trying to come to grips with, because I've blamed the coaches. I've blamed the people handing out contracts. I've blamed the selectors. But it's all the same. Nothing's changed. And the only thing that has stayed the same is that Sophie Devine is the captain. So that is what I'm thinking about now. And I don't really want to think about it because I love Sophie Devine. She's one of the best cricketers New Zealand has ever produced. One of the most exciting cricketers New Zealand has ever produced. But it's not really working.
No. And, like, you know, because who was captain before that? Susie Bates was captain for a while, and before that, I think Amy Satterthwaite was captain. I can't remember what order that was.
I think it was the other way. I think it went Bates, Satterthwaite.
Bates to Satterthwaite, yeah, to Devine. And yeah, I don't know. They've actually had a bit of consistency with that under Devine, but they've also gotten worse, and they've, like, the players before have been just star players. Let's let the best player be captain, and that's continued. They've just cycled through that, and maybe that's not the healthiest way to do it. And then at some point, it just looks like that'll be Amelia Kerr next, and she'll have to be the captain with the weight of the world on her shoulders after Bates and Devine have stopped playing, and she's kind of the only one there doing the world class stuff. I don't know.
But maybe Amelia Kerr is the one to bring in the fearless approach.
That's the best case scenario. Didn't see that when she captained them in the first ODI though. But hey, Sophie Devine's back next time, hopefully. So we'll see. I mean, that's like, to be fair, that's not that you don't change an entire environment in one game because the main captain is injured and the vice captain steps up. Like, obviously that wasn't going to happen, but at some point that's got to, because they need a bit of confidence from somewhere. Otherwise, they're just like shooting themselves in the foot, and they can't afford to do that. They got to at least control the controllable stuff, and it's not happening a lot at the moment.
We don't talk about foreign sports and non-Kiwi athletes, but if this was an NBA team, I'd be like, blow it up, start tanking. And when you hear some of the language used, it sounds like they're already tanking. They're like, we don't have the depth. We don't have the players. So we're just going to lose.
Their A team beat England's A team, but yeah, they don't have the depth.
I don't know. If there is to be a White Ferns revolution, Craig Cumming as coach, Amelia Kerr as captain, we'll keep it moving forward. But we'll see. The White Ferns have 2 more ODIs to change this whole stinky vibe, or take it even further to that area of the mangroves where the mangroves just start to stink. Just gets the smell gets a bit funky, and not in a good way. So that will be interesting. They play in Hamilton now. 2 games, Thursday and Sunday. So we'll be across that, and we'll be recording our subscriber podcast on Thursday for the generous folks on Patreon and with paid Substack subscriptions. We appreciate your support, and we'll be delivering that podcast on Thursday for you as well. Until then, pick up yourself, love yourself, kia kaha, stay beautiful, chur chur.